Good evening. I am Dr. Gregory Salters, and thank you for joining us again as we talk about things that help us be successful. When we're talking about things, particularly, I've been looking at a lot of things that have been happening in law enforcement. I've had the benefit of speaking with a lot of universities throughout the state of Florida, being on some of their panels as we discuss the intersection of what's really going on in our colleges and what we can do about education. I've often talked about various programs that individuals have had that have been traditional programs. Some individuals may remember the drug abuse resistance education or the DARE programs, Just Say No to Dope. We talk about other types of programs that are in our schools, the various levels, and we talk about different education that happens within our communities. But have we truly talked about the intersection of law enforcement and education in its many forms and how it can help us deal with some of the issues that we're currently dealing with law enforcement? Is education could also deal with, and it's on both sides. It would be the education of our community, the education of law enforcement professionals, the education of our educators and the educational system, all the way up to and including our various colleges, their programs and law enforcement training. So tonight, as you all are tuning in here with me, I want to have a conversation. I want us to listen to each other. I'm looking forward to you all sharing your ideas. Some of the ideas you may have may come from personal experiences that you've had dealing in this realm of law enforcement and education, and how you may have been in education and you've worked with law enforcement, how law enforcement has worked with education, how you've worked with various curriculums or programs that will help intersect us and see if in fact there's some things or some opportunities that are there that could really help us take our community to the next level, because I honestly believe with education we can accomplish anything. So as we begin this talk tonight, let's think about it. Law enforcement, and as we're defining law enforcement, we're dealing with anybody in the uniform. We're dealing with your police officers, we're dealing with your detectives, we're dealing with our correctional officers, we're dealing with probation officers, we're dealing with your attorneys, your lawyers, your judges, anyone that is on that law enforcement team. We're looking at what can we do to deal with the intersection of education. And for our discussion, I'd like to start it off with a chronology, because we start looking at it, if we start at elementary education, what is it and how have we really been engaged in our lower education, in our K through 5, K through 6? We'll deal with that, because if you look at that, good evening, Shedley, glad to have you with us. We know that you're out there doing a lot of things, helping individuals with their FAFSAs and finding money for college. So glad that you're with us. And when you're talking about it in that K through 6 area, what type of interaction or intersection do we have with law enforcement and education? We no longer have the DARE program. Due to some fundings, we may not have an officer assigned to the schools. And if they are assigned to the schools, is their function more a law enforcement guardian type function, or is it to engage the students, faculty, and family and community of those in the K through 5? Because when you look at it, I am fortunate enough to have taught DARE for 4 years at 7 different schools. Now my DARE kids are approximately 33, 34 years of age. And many times I see them and they reflect back on conversations and lessons and relationships that we've had since they were in the 5th grade, when they were approximately 11 or 12 years old. So imagine if we still had that type of interaction, those type of programs, what impact that could be having on what we're dealing with in society now with our relationship between law enforcement and the community. Because many times you couldn't tell the byproduct of the DARE program, because it was not only just the 5th graders that you taught DARE to, you actually became a part of that school family. You became a part of the student's family. And as parents, if you have kids, once you see someone that pours into your child, that also gives you a special connection with that particular individual. And that contact and that information goes on for generations. Because many times we focus on how the negative impact of law enforcement may impact some individuals. We also need to look at the positive impact that positive interaction can have with those same individuals. And now when you move up just a little bit from the K through 5 and you go to 6 through 12 and you're looking at middle school. I know that we're here in the city of Fort Lauderdale. We have some of our middle schools, William Dandy Middle School, that has a critical thinking and criminal justice program and law program there. So that is an opportunity for us to really engage that campus. Do we really do that to the best of our ability? Do we have it to where officers that work in the area just routinely stop by the school to say hello, drop in, and we become an integral part of their learning process, to where we're in the community? We come into the classroom and then we can give them that real world and book knowledge and put these things together. That is another way that we are looking at this intersection that is not a negative encounter, because sometimes in some neighborhoods, some kids only see law enforcement when we're actually in the community enforcing the law. It would be great if they could see the other side of us. And that's when you look at society. Some communities definitely see law enforcement more in an enforcement capacity as opposed to a community building or engaging capacity. And I believe it's on both sides. One, for the community to invite us into some of their events that we may be unaware of, and some things that they're having formally and informally. And it's also up to us to reach out to the community to find out when they're having things to where we can better engage with them, talk with them, and have some true functions. And that's why when I look at education, it'd be kind of easy for us in law enforcement, because all we'd have to do, contact the schools. I worked with the schools. All the schools are very welcoming and can need assistance. So imagine if we just decided which day of the week or whatever it is, or assign someone to drop by the school, just say hello and just go and hang out at the school. Perhaps you might want to tutor them in math. Perhaps you might want to tutor them in reading. And it was one of the agencies, Broward Sheriff's Office, one of my buddies over there. He played drums when he was younger. And the kids in the high school were really shocked when he demonstrated his stick techniques. But that, again, brought together a connection, and that caused them to see a humanistic side of law enforcement. And some of them even wanted to be cops once they saw that we were human. Are we really taking advantage of and creating opportunities for us to really get in there and engage? Fort Lauderdale High School down here with us has a criminal justice program, and some of our retired officers have actually even worked in the program. And I know the school resource officers over there are aware of the program, go in and volunteer. But are we as an agency and are we as a profession being intentional about taking advantage of engaging with these particular educational opportunities? And that happens in most schools, because all police officers have to, at a minimum, have a GED or a high school diploma. So if you have acquired your GED or high school diploma, you could go back into the schools and just talk to them about success and your journey. And that may motivate and or inspire some of those kids to go to the next level. That is what we're really looking for. Because no matter who you are, you have something to offer somebody. So it's up to us to really look out there and see how can we engage with the educational system. Also, for my educators, you think about it. Any law enforcement officer that you know, you're needing assistance in the class. We don't always have to be enforcers. Imagine how we could add value to your social studies classes. Imagine how we could add value to your chemistry classes, because what some people think, they think that all law enforcement officers have is a criminal justice background. Our backgrounds in education are just as diverse as everybody else's out there. We do not have to have a criminal justice background. So I don't care what your subject matter is. If you talk to law enforcement, you talk to people and you ask, do you all have a law enforcement officer that might be good in physics? We could probably find one for you. If you want to talk to a law enforcement officer who has been to law school, we have those. If you want to talk to someone about a law enforcement officer that has been in auto mechanics, we have those. Carpenters. You name a profession, and I know that we have someone in law enforcement that has an experience there. And if we don't have anyone there, I bet we can network to find someone that we know in the community that would be willing to come out and talk to you about any subject matter. But I just haven't seen us really discussing how to do that and being very intentional about doing that. And I know sometimes it becomes a staffing issue and how much time will we allocate to various things that we do. But what better way to utilize your time to build relationships in the community so that therefore when things happen in the community will feel comfortable talking to us about it, sharing information with us about it so that we can possibly solve crimes, one, reduce the chances of crime, then solve crime and identify the culprits so that therefore everyone can do what most of us want to do. We want to have kids to live better than we did. And we want to be able to enjoy a decent quality of life. And that's not too much to ask. And then on the next level of education, when you get into college, what is actually in our curriculum for our criminal justice majors? And this is whether they're getting an AA or a BS degree in criminal justice. What type classes are there? Also, what type electives are people being encouraged to take that would make them a better law enforcement professional? Sometimes we need to talk to people and say, okay, I know that you have an opportunity to take X class or Y class. Which one do you think is really going to set you apart and help you be successful in your career? We need to have those kind of conversations with individuals. These things will be outstanding. And Shelley say, pretty sure there are some officers out there that went to college. Okay. Pretty sure there are some officers out there that went to college on a full scholarship. Most definitely. And with the scholarships that you've been able to help many of your students find, a lot of times people are unaware of that. And I think that sometimes, I know for case in point with me, I had an outstanding young man that I talked to for years, mentored him. He was able to go off to college. He hadn't even thought about college as being an opportunity. That wasn't what he really had his sights set on. But then after we talked, he went off to college, did some outstanding things. He's earned his master's degree, and now he is working in security, like head of security in a retail facility. So he's done law enforcement and he's found his passion working in retail and retail security. And those are some things that we have to do. Once we talk to and educate individuals, they will be surprised about what it is that they can actually do with their degrees, do with their lives based on that intersection with law enforcement and education. Also, when you look at the curriculums within our police academies, what are the classes that we're looking at in the police academy? And also, who is it that's teaching the classes? It is a combined effort, not only just the subject matter, but the individuals that are teaching it, because sometimes we can have a, yes, Ashton Lashane, you are that guy. And I see your Phi Beta Sigma sign there. And I'm glad that you're able to join us tonight. So it's kind of like I tell people, the stuff that I tell you is Googleable. And so therefore, if you wish to fact check me, you can do that. But I'm very proud of you, young man, proud of the things that you and your family are doing and how we saw that combination between education and law enforcement. And it just so happens, since Ashton's on here, one of the things that combination between law enforcement and education, the way that I met Ashton, he was an outstanding student over at Dillard High School here in South Florida, but he was also in the Alpha Phi Alpha Men of Tomorrow mentoring program. So I'm an Alpha and I was in charge of our mentoring program, and that's the Zeta Alpha Lambda chapter. So we had that mentoring program. We had our young men there. We were talking about careers, talking about success, talking about what it is to be a young man becoming a man in that journey and things that we had to do. Had people coming in, talking to them about various careers, opening up their eyes to certain things, because once you expose people to things, they will never be the same. So therefore, that is what we need to do when you're talking about education. We aren't just strictly talking about book education. We're talking about informing each other of things. And it's really kind of interesting because, as Shedley being a brace advisor, she knows that many brace advisors are really overwhelmed with the number of students that they have. Can you imagine how your brace advisor at your schools would appreciate it if your law enforcement professionals were to stop in and say, hey guys, I'm just going to spend a day with you all. If y'all want me to talk to some of the kids about staying out of trouble, career options, to where we can just talk about it. They would appreciate it. The students would appreciate it. We would benefit, because many times by having that encounter and that positive encounter, that could stop people from doing things that they otherwise would have done. And also by having that relationship, they can tell us about things that are happening in the community so that we can help make their community safer. But are we really intentional about building those bonds and those bridges, or is it something that just happens accidentally? Okay, Danielle, I see you here. Danielle Pierre says there should be a course on community policing offered to all criminal justice, urban planning, and law studies students. I totally agree with you. And when you talk about community policing, when you look at the tenets of community policing, I currently am teaching a course with procedural justice at the Fort Lauderdale Police Department. And when we talk about that, community policing has basically three pillars. You're dealing with building partnerships, problem solving, and also organizational transformation. So when you're dealing with partnerships, the partnership I'm talking about tonight is a partnership between law enforcement professionals and our educators. And then when you also talk about that, we look at it in a context to where we're also looking at partnering with other people in the community. I see Shelly, so you say one brace advisor for all 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. Wow. That is an overload with one brace advisor for all 9th. So is that one brace advisor for 9th grade, one brace advisor for 10th grade, one brace advisor for 11th, and one for 12th, meaning one for each grade and 4 brace advisors? Or do you mean one total for the school? Shedley. And so when we're looking at this, these are opportunities that we have as law enforcement professionals to reach back over there and have an impact in the educational process. And Daniela, where is it that you're working again? Because I know some people may wish to reach out to you about some information at our colleges throughout the state of Florida. And I think that we have some people on here that can really add to some of the things that we're talking about. Because right now it is a very interesting time when you look at the things that we're dealing with COVID and how that has our educational system looking now. You're seeing a lot more online offerings. Right now, it's not like before. This is a new day because you could be living in an area of one college, but because many of the classes are being held online, you can be going to a college that you otherwise would not have been able to attend if you like their class offerings. I have a mentee of mine. She attends North Carolina A&T. They're dealing with distance learning. So she is really out of state, but still dealing with her work in North Carolina. Okay, so Daniela, you're down at Miami-Dade College. So for those of you all dealing with things and need some information, Miami-Dade College North Campus, please reach out to and speak with Daniela. And if you're in the Broward area, really anywhere, you can reach out to Shedley because she is amazing dealing with the scholarship applications and the FAFSAs anywhere. So these are 2 people that you all see that are on here that are putting themselves out there, that are here to help us go to that next level. And imagine law enforcement, if you work at a police department and you're having some youth groups, you may even want to ask either one of these ladies to come out and speak to your group. And with everything being on Zoom, it would be even easier to have them drop in on your Zoom. And Shedley even has a book out there talking about FAFSA and scholarships and getting your scholarship money. And down at Miami-Dade North, they have an outstanding program. I've been teaching out there in their police academy and some of their things. These are the individuals and these are some of the connections that you need to make so that we can go to the next level. Because if you even look at it, there's things that have been stated that prisons are being built based on educational levels starting as far back as the 3rd grade, depending on which research you look at. So therefore, we understand that if we can increase our educational opportunities, increase the educational level, we can actually decrease the chances of some of our individuals going down the wrong path. Because the educational level of individuals within the penal institutions is shown to be lower than general society. So we're trying to stem this. We're trying to build some relationships. We're trying to really move the pendulum forward. And with that connection, it is amazing. And now that I've talked about it from a true educator or educational standpoint, I'd also like to talk about it with other things that are just outside of that normal realm. Kind of like you may have Youth Crime Watch at some schools, which is still within the educational environment, and they work with the youth. Also very proud of some things that JJ McDowell, a fraternity brother of mine, Alpha Alpha, he kicked off a program and started it years back. It's Youth Behind the Shield. It's over there at Dillard High School. We got Officer Jackson, Officer Lockwood, and those carrying on that program, where it is a group of youth that are finding out more about law enforcement. They're having some frank and open discussions. They also just did an outstanding beach cleanup and had the mayor of Fort Lauderdale out there on the beach with them, saying this is the type of interaction that we need to do. And that's another one inside of schools and involving law enforcement and just some work that they're doing. And the funny thing about law enforcement, many officers, when we're public servants, we tend not to let everybody know everything that we're doing. And I often ask people, what are you doing to not be the best kept secret? Because when you're the best kept secret, individuals don't know what you're doing and don't know what impact it's having on society. So we need to be doing a better job of letting the community know what things we're doing in our effort to further engage, further be a part of the community, and help everybody grow. The other thing that we have is many police departments have what they have different names for it. Some call the Community Policing Forum, the Community Policing Academy, the Citizens Police Academy, but it's basically a program where they bring in citizens and leaders from the community that actually go through classes of what it is about the police department, learn more about what the inner workings of the police department are, get to build more connections with individuals inside the police department. So therefore, again, we're crossing that gap. That's law enforcement and education, because what we're doing now is educating the public about what it is that we do. We're opening the doors. This is us. We're trying to demystify law enforcement. And quite honestly, in law enforcement, our job would be tremendously difficult if we do not have the help of the community, because we need the community to be there behind us to let us know what issues are happening in the community. We need the community to help us to identify if there are crimes, if there are patterns of crime that are going on. And also in the good times, we need the community to let us know when are we having some outstanding kids out there that we need to be going through. I know that Sunland Park and everyone's going to be doing some reading to the students, and we've been invited to be readers in these programs. This is another thing. You have cops, we come out, we'll read to the kids. We will do those kind of things. Involve us, let us know about them. Have you developed a relationship at your school with more than one police officer, where therefore you can call that officer to get things done, as opposed to just merely calling the police department? These relationships will take you far. And this is what we talk about. Even one class that I teach, everybody communicates, but few connect. Well, you may have communicated with some officers. Hi, how you doing? This is me, that's that. But you haven't really connected with them. And how many times have you taken the time to talk to some individuals? And you may even find out that you all went to the same elementary school, that you all went to the same college, you had the same interests. And now with that connection, you begin to really make some things happen. You begin to really be able to be impactful in our community as we work together in this partnership. As I mentioned with community policing, the partnerships that we have to have those partnerships. Then with those partnerships, then we have to be able to problem solve, because if you aren't out there solving problems, what are we doing? The problem could be in the curriculums that we're having, either in elementary, middle, high school, college, and or the police academy. But we must come together to deal with the things that we're doing moving forward. I see one of my favorite Deltas, Tina Teague. Thank you for joining us together. And just to throw her a shameless plug, if any of y'all are looking for any insurance, with her being the great Delta lady that she is, you know she could only go with State Farm to be an agent with them. So if you all are looking for any insurance with all this stuff going around, make sure you contact Tina Teague. She can definitely do that. And as well, and you're talking about someone that's engaged in the community, if you're talking about anything dealing with brain cancer, she is definitely your person that is passionate about that because of her story and dealing with these walkathons and everything with Delta Sigma Theta. You definitely need to touch base with Tina Teague. She's definitely dynamo and can get out there. I love it when people that are in the community doing things really plug into what we're doing, because when we pull all together, we can really make some things happen. And that's what I really want us to do, to be intentional, because it's very easy to point the finger and find out who's at fault. But whose fault is it that we have not built these bonds and looked at the intersection between particularly law enforcement and education? When you look at law enforcement, just a triangle, if you will, or I know, Tina, you're talking about the Delta, but if you're dealing with the law enforcement, education, and the community, those three right there, when we really engage those three and we move that forward, there is nothing that we can't do and no problems that we can't solve. When you look at the things that are happening across the country, many times the unrest, when they're wondering about what procedures are going on and how do we really do that, we're really looking at it saying that if we were really together and everybody talked, everyone would know the procedures that law enforcement goes through. They would know the procedures that happen after a use of force. They would know and have the confidence in law enforcement that this is what goes on. And law enforcement, we would have so many contacts in the community that therefore people would trust us, allow the process to go through, and we would be able to discuss these things so that we don't have situations to where they would cause individuals to want to destroy our neighborhoods, destroy the neighborhoods they live in. And then we're having to go to a whole different level as what was happening in Philadelphia, to where now you've had an incident, we have cops that have been injured, we have individuals that have been arrested, and we have property that has been damaged. We do not need to have that in our communities. We need to really work together to avoid those particular situations. So when we're talking about it again, another thing that you may wish to do is discuss, when we're talking about law enforcement and we're talking about education, we also need to be talking to people about the importance of voting. This is not only voting to elect individuals, but do our kids and do many people in our community really understand that if you're not a registered voter, you cannot sit on a jury. If you do not sit on a jury, your viewpoint, your insights of life and perhaps a situation will not be able to be heard in a grand jury or a jury. Also, when you're talking about law enforcement and education, this is an educational moment, because now when you're not sitting on the jury, that means we can't hear what it is your point of view. Further, how many times have you all seen it where individuals have been selected for jury duty and they put more effort in getting out of jury duty than they do to anything else in life? And so then we wonder why certain things happen. And also when we're voting, we're out there, and yes, it is definitely important to be voting on the president of the United States, but we do have an electoral college. And what I'd like to educate people about is you do not have an electoral college when it is on the local level. So when you're on the local level, we are dealing with popular vote, majority votes. So now when you're talking about it, are you looking at the judges? Are you looking at the amendments? Are you looking at your commissioners? All of this is things that law enforcement and education needs to come together so that we can really show this interaction, because I think that some people don't vote because they really don't understand what registering to vote means, the privilege that it is, and how it weighs into things. And people do not understand the power of the vote, particularly on things that impact you on a daily life. For instance, right now, individuals were talking about the water and the flooding in the neighborhoods. That is one thing where people were mostly looking at it from one particular standpoint. But one thing that I'd like to educate you about is, now think about it. If you lived in a low-lying area, your area was flooded, and you had a medical emergency or a law enforcement emergency, many times law enforcement could not have gotten through the deep water if you would have needed assistance and or was slowed down. The same thing with emergency medical response. If the water is high, it really slows down and hampers our ability to get to you, even if you needed assistance. These are things that we need to be talking about from a standpoint of law enforcement, education, and the community. So as you can see, tonight we've talked about it. We've talked about this intersection, and I would like to challenge everyone that listens to this to see what we can do to be intentional about increasing the engagement and increasing the relationship between law enforcement and education on all levels. Talk to your law enforcement professionals, invite them into your educational opportunities. Talk to them about the various classes, have them come into your schools, have them speak to your kids. We're in a Zoom environment. Many of us in law enforcement have been on numerous Zooms. We'll Zoom in, Zoom out, do whatever we can to help improve our communities. So with that in mind, remember, we're talking about that intersection of law enforcement, education, and definitely our community, so that we can move our community forward. We can reduce crime, reduce the fear of crime, and also, most of all, make sure that we can move forward. I am Dr. Gregory A. Salters, and you all have been seasoned for success. Good night.